I think there's this like push pull sometimes from management to the front line where management's like, well, just do a really great job and go the extra mile. And then the frontline team's like, well, what does that mean?
I think that it comes down to really knowing your client or getting to know your client.
Don't create a process around one problem.
All right, how to stand out as an insurance agent? Because there's only 7 bajillion out there, right? There's not enough. There's not enough. You know, one way of giving good customer service is to go that extra mile. And we talked about this in an earlier podcast, but you know, I'm just gonna ask Bobby and Steven, when you think of like really great service, what brands pop into your mind?
I think Disney gives really great service. And when I think about my daughter worked for Disney for a couple of years, and it was something that was super important. I mean, people save for years and years and years to go and have an experience, right? And so one bad experience with a cast member could ruin a family's whole trip. So it is something that they pride themselves on. They train people on. They're required to train, and they set those expectations. And there are people watching all day long to make sure that they're meeting customer expectations, because this is a big investment for people to make these trips with their families.
Yeah. No, I agree. What do you think, Steven?
I mean, I do love me some Gucci. So every time you go in, you know the experience you're going to get, because otherwise people don't buy things. But I also I Ashley Furniture. We just bought some new couches and stuff, and I love to go shopping looking like I'm homeless, like on purpose, right? Because I'm like, I don't want to deal with people. I just want to look at things. I want to sit on the furniture, whatever. And we had the most amazing experience multiple times at multiple locations where we were greeted. They asked what we were looking for. They said they were going to check in and kind of left us alone, but answered questions when we had them. But they kind of asked us what we wanted the experience to be. The guy's like, I can follow you around, or you can just wave your hands in the air if you got some questions. I'm like, I choose option 2. And as soon as I waved my hand, he was right there. I was like, I don't even know where you came from. But I mean, I think it's just different based on also what you're looking for and what you want.
Well, that's why I kind of always look at Chick-fil-A, right? Like, I mean, first of all, the chicken sandwich is delicious. And their little kale salad with the chicken tendies, super good. But like, there could be a line wrapped around eternity. I know it's going to take 5 minutes. Like, I have trust and faith that I can get, you know, I try to eat healthy, so it tends to be a little bit on the healthier side. I also think, just like we talked about, like Delta to me always comes in, and they don't do it right all the time, but you know, I had a one woman sit with me on the phone for 45 minutes to try to book rewards travel for me and my husband. And it was complicated. And she got it done. She's like, oh, that's such a feeling of accomplishment. It's like, yes. I also, you know, I kind of always lean on things that like work really well that you don't need customer service on. You know, everybody's got the Stanley versus Yeti, but man, my drinks stay cold in a Yeti. You know, like, and they dishwash. I have not had a broken Yeti.
Yeah.
I've had 0 broken Yetis in the whole course of the ecosystem. So sometimes, I don't know, I just think of it from those perspectives. But when you're trying to stick out, how you treat people is going to make a big, big difference. So, Bobby, one of the ways people can really stick out is that empathy and active listening. And can I just tell a quick active listening story?
I'd love it.
So I was at this like Carrier MGA. They're also an agent. They do this very niche product, and they had their whole sales team. So there was like 30 people, and I was giving directions, and like a third of the people would be like, "What?" And I was like, maybe we all need to work on our active listening, because you're all in sales. Your whole job is to listen to people. And it happened like 5 times during the day. The CEO came over. He goes, do you do sessions on active listening? Because apparently my whole team is struggling with active listening. So how important is it, Bobby, for active listening and empathy?
Well, I think that we have to be able to hear the client. We cannot be listening to respond to people, right? We have to really listen to what it is that they're saying. And I was actually sitting there with my grandson the other night, and he's showing me some things on his iPad, and I'm going, oh, that, yeah. And so I was responding in that way. And he looked me dead in the eyes and he said, Mimi, don't say to me. Ask me a question.
Oh,
He was very like he wanted me to be more engaging and like ask him a question then about what it was that he was showing me. And I thought from a 5.5-year-old, maybe Colton needs to teach the active listening class.
that's right.
Because we need to be listening and understand. He didn't feel like my response of oh yeah, that's interesting, right, was really engaging. So how can we ask some questions? How do we throw some other things in there so the person is really feeling heard? I think that we really need to understand what it is that people are looking for, and a lot of times they don't know, especially in insurance agencies. They could just be upset about something. I can empathize with them. They're upset about their rate, but maybe they're not really upset about their rate. They're upset about the fact that maybe their agent didn't call them back for 4 days.
Yeah. No, but it's so much easier to blame the rate, isn't it?
Exactly. So, when I can dig a little bit deeper and I can really start asking questions to learn more and to be more understanding and put myself in that person's shoes. I think we do a lot where we just jump into problem solving mode rather than taking a few moments to breathe and understand, okay, really, where is this person coming from? And what is the solution that they're looking for? Because my solution may not be the solution that they're even looking for. So we got to take a moment, take a breath, really be able to understand those things and make the client feel heard and valued. Sometimes they just want to tell us their story.
Yeah.
And
And I
it's
think,
that simple.
I mean, it's so egregious when you hear it on recorded phone calls, right? Like they're just not doing those things. And this is why I think it's really important agencies sit down. I think there's this like push pull sometimes from management to the front line where management's like, well, just do a really great job and go the extra mile. And then the frontline team's like, well, what does that mean? Right. Or they're like, in their mind, they are, right, based on the tools and their experience and their training, they're going the extra mile. And there's just always this gap. So I think it's really important that leaders sit down and tell people the expectations, like write it out, map it down so that there's touch points for a better experience. Like when we do our renewal review call program, we actually make people submit the written process that they're going to give their team. Now we have a template, but even though we train on it, every agency has nuances, right? So big one is like, when does the producer go through? When does the producer get involved? When does it not? You need to make those judgment calls right now so we can give as much clarity. So, Stephen, how about, to stand out the idea of building these relationships? So, we're big advocates. Is your team doing a transaction or building a relationship? Are we Britney Spears getting married for the weekend in Vegas? Or, are we in it for the long haul here? What says you on that?
I think that it comes down to really knowing your client or getting to know your client and putting notes in the system that are impactful to help other people know the client. Like, are you listening for cues? Do we know, and it might sound corny, about hobbies or kids or pets or animals' names, or what do they do on the weekend? Does their car have a name? There's lots of different things we can look at to build a more personal experience, and then the client feels more welcome. I know every time I call my agent, they ask about my trailer or my chickens. And it could be a brand new hire, and they're like, shut up, you have 2 trailers? That's insane. Where do you go? Or like, what do you do with the chicken? Again, I think there's ways that we can go the little extra mile by listening and just asking some questions to get to know our clients a little bit better. But it's also making us a better insurance advisor and not just an order taker, right? We really have to take it to the next level of, if I tell you that on the weekends I go camping in my fifth wheel and you don't see one on my policy, maybe you should ask me about my fifth wheel or who's insuring it.
But Stephen, I don't have time. I have to quote it. I mean,
I know the struggle is real, but the happier the client is coming in, the real struggle is when the client's coming in hot, you can normally diffuse it by making it a little more personal or reminding them you are a person. And if we have some of that information at hand, it helps de-escalate situations a little faster in most cases.
So I think you have to build these relationships to stand out because people won't care about you unless they know how much you care, right? So that's a big Zig Ziglar quote. Like we have to show caring to these people, not just transactions. And I think that's, again, going back to some of the companies that you guys talked about, like that's something that they do, like just as simple as, hey, I know you've been waiting for a long time, or hey, you know what? Steven's shaking his hand to Gucci, doing his little party dance there. So this goes into like, how do you do personalization techniques? And I think with WOW customer service, we always encourage everybody, like write down, if you know Bobby's grandkids' names, if you know Steven likes camping, if for me, like I travel all the time, where have you been last? You have to just take the 30 seconds it takes to connect with a person.
Yeah.
Like it's just a person. And I try really hard to do this with people when I see them stressed. Like even like the other day I was my room wasn't quite ready. So I went to the hotel bar and had a drink. And the woman just was like, do you want anything? Like she was like coming off hot. And I was like, all right, I got some time to kill. I was like, what's your name? And like, you realize like she's supposed to be in customer service. She should be doing that to me, but maybe she never got trained or she's having a rough day. You just saw her whole face change. I don't think anybody asked her name in probably 3 days. Right. And unfortunately, this area had all these bad thunderstorms and tornado watches, and everybody was a little stressed. And then I was just like, what's your favorite thing on the menu? What do you think? And then she was just like, right, Johnny on the spot, because I connected with her. And so I was like, it's not my responsibility as a customer, but it is our responsibility to, when we train our teams to make sure that they do it. And it shouldn't be the customer's responsibility, basically. But whatever you do, and I tell people this all the time. If you bring up my dog, America, I forget everything I'm mad about.
Uh-huh.
How's America? Oh, she's super good today. She was so excited to go to doggy place. They lost their manager. Their manager left, and we don't know what we're going to do now. And, she didn't eat her breakfast. She was so distraught. Like, I'll show you photos, and they'll be like, what we talk about? Probably my rape, but we're good now. So you have to use personality techniques. But Bobby, let's talk about the most important one, I think, which is, because all that stuff should be human beings 101.
Should be
human being 101. But in insurance, we have to solve a lot of problems. This is where I think everybody's values come into play, of how far we're going to go. Are we going to listen to them? Are we going to bite their head off? And sometimes people's problems in insurance are unsolvable because people are not educated on how it works. And I think that person has the opportunity to wow them or insult them.
Yeah.
So how important is it to think about problem solving, Bobby?
Yeah, I think we have to create a team of problem solvers and not problem finders only. We have a lot of problem finders, and then they just find a lot of problems and bring them to their leaders and go, look at all these problems. Can you solve this for me? But how do we empower our team to help solve problems? So, I think it can be as easy as when that client calls, what if we just simply pull up their account in the agency management system and look to see what's going on?
Yeah.
Bobby, this is blasphemy.
Should I also be verifying their contact information? You are ridiculous now.
I could be talking to Steven. I could be asking him about these chicken bonnets that we're going to knit.
I need to stay 100% focused on the person. And when that's up, that's distracting.
Well, here we go. Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the account detail. I'm going to say, what is going on? Oh, Steven has some chickens. He's got a couple of RVs, during 6 p.m. I'm going to check the billing. I'm going to see, oh, Steven, did you get that bill that we sent you?
I should probably call on that.
Right? Like now we're finding, and I'm going to look at some of the last attachments that have been attached. I'm going to look at some of the last activities that have happened on the account and make sure that there's no issues and no problems. And then as we're going through things, my role as a licensed insurance professional is to help educate my client to make the decisions that are best for them. I'm not a sleazy salesperson, but if I identify that Steven is missing coverage and he let his policy lapse on his fifth wheel that he just told me he's taking out camping this weekend, my job is to bring that up, raise my hand and say, Steven, oh my gosh, did you know?
You probably shouldn't be taking that nowhere.
You shouldn't be taking that anywhere. We got to get that fixed. Are you missing coverage? Do you have the right things? So I think really identifying these problems before they arise, and this goes back to, why we do renewal reviews too, because we are trying to be proactive and solve problems for agencies before they arise. Because could you confidently sit there listening to this podcast and say, if you got a claims call from one of your top 100 clients today, would you feel confident that the coverage is there? 100%. How many people just shut me off?
The click. Somebody's calling somebody. Somebody's calling somebody.
I think we have to be proactive. We have to know, we have to prevent those things, those common issues that arise. Now, here's the other thing, though, that I want to say is don't create a process around one problem, right? I think our teams get crazy and they have this really bad experience and they go, we need a process for everybody. Let's just go and check everybody's billing in every carrier every day just to make sure that nobody's not paying their bill, which then now we're dragging down our team, right? We don't need to create processes around one instance, but if we see a trend happening, that's where now we want to be proactive and say, okay, now do we need to figure out a way to potentially solve this? But don't start creating solutions around a singular problem either.
Yeah. And I think you need to educate your team on what to do to solve problems. That's just huge, and how to resolve them efficiently. Yeah. And I like to just remind people, two things can be true at the same time, right? Like the client can be wrong and we still have to make them somewhat happy, right? So sometimes I think account managing, well, they're inaccurate. Okay. Like, cool. Like they're inaccurate. They're still pissed. So what should we do? Should we send them to unhappy prison and just hope that it burns off? I think we have to realize like a lot of people's unhappiness just stems from, uncertainty, or maybe we didn't explain something confidently and we caused a problem. We need to own that. And the last one is constant feedback. So one of the things I love that we do is we listen to recorded phone calls for our clients and provide it's not even me, Stephen, and Bobby. Like we have our secret shoppers do it. So it's not like, well, Sally is getting divorced, so I know why she was short with people. It's like, there's like these secret shoppers can be savage sometimes too. And they're like, worst call ever. So I think you have to constantly be adjusting things. And by the way, if you write your process out, you have to adjust them for the simple reason that at the end of the day, the customer may not value them. We had one agency that they just were so short-staffed, so they went to an automated phone attendant. And, people would be all pissy britches about it. And the owner would just get on. He had a really good, he's like, it's so hard to find people that want to even come and work and just answer phones. If you know anyone, I will gladly take their phone number and I will call them and get them in for an interview. But until then, like, this is the best way for you to get routed to the person who can help you the most, because we can't seem to, it'd been like 2 years and people would come and go after 2 months or didn't like it, stuff like that. So you have to keep identifying ways to get to the best spot possible or explain what's going on. And they would say, even when we had a person answering the phones, 25% of the calls would still go to voicemail. So I don't know. I think you have to get there. And then you have to make sure you implement change correctly. So when people have been doing one thing for so long and now you want them to do something else, Stephen, what typically happens?
It's tomfoolery.
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 Do you have your butterscotch discs in your pocket?
I only go into the agency to get the hard candies and talk about my cat.
Barrels.
I was having a mind lap for a moment. I apologize. So I'm going into the tomfoolery.
But usually when you have to get people to change and there is a little bit lack of hierarchy, it's a hard road, right? And you have to stay on it. But the biggest thing you need to share is why. How is this going to make their lives better?
How will it benefit you?
And you have to inspect what you expect.
Yes.
But what I would tell you is something that Jason Cass always says. I love quoting it because you can't change your people, change your people. If somebody doesn't want to follow your protocol, and there's a big difference between trying and being insubordinate, you might need to change your people. Like, I'm pretty sure at Chick-fil-A, it's if you say thank you, they're like, my pleasure. And you get that told to you 5 times, you keep saying thank you. At some point, they move on to the next high school kid that would love to get free chicken sandwiches.
Yeah.
So
There's somebody out there.
level up your standards, everybody, but look on how you're going to stand out because good service will reign supreme in 2025. Thanks, everybody.